All right. I've noticed, Sergio, that when you win your bets against me, you are very quick to brag about them. I've also noticed that when you lose your bets, which is just as often as you win, you don't hear a word from you. Not a peep. You don't even recognize that those bets actually happened. So congratulations, I guess, on going 3-0 this week.
Chris Mannix, you know how hard it is to land a three-punch combination? You know how hard is it to pick three winners in any sport? I don't care what sport, horse racing or football. You know how hard is it to go 3 for 3? I did that. It was like 22 to 1 odds, man. So all the people, all my fans, all the people that listen to our sports picks, I hope they got rich off of this because it was like a 22 to 1 hit. I got all three right, and you only got one right, Chris Mannix. Give my credit.
But I did get the one right, which was Richard Torrez winning by decision, which was the bet that we made that had the best odds. So I did come out even. Did you even bet any money on these fights?
No, I didn't bet no money because I don't know how to. I don't have a online account. I'm cash, baby. I gotta go and put it on the table and get my ticket. I you know me, man. I'm not technology prone. I don't know all this stuff.
No, you're not. Chris Mannix alongside the former junior middleweight champion, Sergio Mora. And as we discussed, we're going to talk about the Filip Hrgovic win over Joe Joyce, what that means for both guys moving forward. We're going to talk about Richard Torrez getting the biggest win of his career, Tszyu getting back on track, and Josh Warrington maybe getting back into the ring. But let's start, Sergio, over in the UK with that Hrgovic-Joyce fight. This was viewed as a 50-50 type of fight, crossroads type of fight. Hrgovic had not fought since that loss to Danny Dubois last year. Joe Joyce had lost 3 of his last 4, lost the decision to Derek Chisora his last time out. It kind of went how I thought it was going to go. I mean, I did think there'd be a knockout, but I thought Hrgovic was going to control the fight for the most part, and he did. Joyce had a few moments, but those Hrgovic right hands were there all day long. Your thoughts on Hrgovic's performance?
Well, you tweeted something on your social media feed that it was a slobber knocker. I thought it was worse than that. I thought it was a slow motion slobber knocker. Both these guys were like stuck in mud, fighting underwater. You could tell that Joe Joyce was every bit of 39 years his age. He's gonna be 40 years old in September, so he's already old. He was getting hit with those right hands. If it wasn't for his punch resistance and how big he is, how lumbering and strong he is, he would have got knocked out. He would have got knocked out by those right hands from Hrgovic. But this is what happens when you lose, especially when you lose 4 out of your last fights, 2 by knockout. You lose that confidence. And Joyce was never an upper body mover. He relied on a powerful jab. That's how he made his career. Powerful jab, and then he slows guys down, and then ends up finding a home for that right hand. He caught Hrgovic with that jab in the first 3 rounds. I could see that Joyce was trying to land that jab, but it wasn't phasing Hrgovic. So credit for Hrgovic. Even though he did take this fight in 2 weeks' notice, he was taking the jabs early. He found a way to win. He didn't get out of character either. Even when he had Joyce, somewhat buzzed, he wasn't going for the kill either. He stayed within his means because of that 2 week notice. I don't think he was in the greatest shape either. So he had that in the back of his head. But all in all, I mean, to step up last minute replacement and beat a guy like Joe Joyce, that's still a big name on your resume. Probably the biggest name on his resume as far as a win.
Well, I mean, he did beat Jelly Zhang, so I know that was a disputed decision win, but he beat him. So that, I think, is still the best win of Hrgovic's career. I expected a little bit more, I think, from Hrgovic. He did take this fight on short notice, but it wasn't that short, right? Like, it wasn't the
2 weeks.
week of. Nah, he had more than that. He had, I think, 3.5 weeks to train for this fight. And look, he had been training with Abel Sanchez for months prior to that. Like, there were a couple of fights that were in the works for Filip Hrgovic that fell apart for whatever reason. So he was in camp. It's not like he wasn't in camp. And I think if you're Hrgovic, you've got to be happy that you came out with a win. It's like I said last week, this fight with Joyce was a gift from the boxing gods to Hrgovic because it was a name opponent that wasn't very good anymore and the kind of guy that could put him back on the map. And that's exactly what he did. But Hrgovic, I think he's got to go back to the drawing board and figure out some of these stamina issues that he's having, right? We can excuse the issues that he had in this Joyce fight. You can chalk that up to short notice, I guess. But what about the Daniel Dubois fight when he ran out of gas in the second half of that fight? I don't know what it is. Is it not training enough? Is it overtraining? We see that sometimes with boxers. They train too hard. Hrgovic does go up to Big Bear and work out with Abel Sanchez. I think people in Hrgovic's team have to kind of figure out what's going on here because he's too young to be gassing out in fights this early. I mean, look, he can beat a guy like Joyce, Sergio, with half a gas tank, but if you step up and fight some of the bigger names at heavyweight, you're going to get beat every time if you can't go past the fourth or fifth round.
This is a man who started off his career knocking out a lot of people. I mean, he's a big, he's El Animal. That's his nickname. He's a monster. He's an animal in there. And he started off knocking out guys. Usually guys like that aren't meant for the second distance. I really don't think it's conditioning issues. I think it's more confidence issues. I think it's more the fact that he's not accustomed going into second half of fights. And he's probably been like that his entire career. So because of that, he needs to adapt. He needs to adapt and turn into a second half fighter because he's not going to be taking out these guys in the first half of the fight. He's going to have to go into the second half of the fight and learn how to set up that right hand. He's a big right hand puncher. He's a smart puncher. He throws the right shots. He was a lot smarter than Joe Joyce, that's for sure. And he's kind of like a Daniel Dubois. I think Daniel Dubois got better after that loss. He's been getting better, but he had stamina issues too. He had confidence issues too. He was a little bit chinny as well. Now he's a world champion. Now he's on top of the world, and he's one of the big dogs on top. I think Hrgovic, I'm not saying he's on that level or that page, but I think he'd take a page from Dubois and maybe find some confidence somewhere and maybe get harder sparring to where they push him to fight in the second half of the fight and maybe get out of Big Bear. I hated training in Big Bear because the altitude is 10,000 feet in the air, and that altitude doesn't let you get to the second half comfortably. So if you're not a second half fighter, that's the last place you want to be training is Big Bear. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but you want to get that confidence. You want to maybe have a couple of weeks in Big Bear, build your lungs, build that stamina, then go back down to LA and then finish off the rest of your camp. I did that and it did wonders for my career and my stamina. I think Hrgovic and Abel Sanchez should do the same.
Isn't the point, though, of training at high altitude to be stronger in the second half of the fights? Isn't that why guys train at altitude like Big Bear and Colorado Springs and some of those places?
No, yeah, and that's what I just said. But when you're up there, you're not going to spar 10, 12 rounds straight and look good. Yes, you're going to do it, but you're going to barely go through it. And I'm putting myself in this position. I used to be in the best shape, and I still used to gas out around 7 rounds in Big Bear and start looking sloppy. But as soon as it came down that 2-hour drive into Los Angeles, I would look like Sugar Ray Leonard flying all over the place. It's a mental thing. It's a confidence thing, man. It's all a confidence thing. So if you know that you can go 10, 12 rounds out of the mountains, out of that altitude, then you carry that confidence no matter where you go. I think it's a mental block for Hrgovic. I know it was for me.
Yeah, I mean, it could be confidence. I think conditioning is just more likely. I know from talking to people in and around his camp, he trains hard. Like, it's not a question of not training hard enough. He might be training too hard at times, and that might be a tweak that he needs to make. Joyce, look, I didn't think he had much left coming into this fight. I walk out of this fight thinking he has less left. He just doesn't. There's no defense to him, Sergio. Hrgovic landed 50% of his shots, 55% of his power shots. He leads with his chin. And look, that chin has held up against some pretty good fighters. It's also not held up against pretty good fighters. He's been knocked out twice by Zhilei Zhang, dropped by Derek Chisora, hit with everything by a 3/4 strength Filip Hrgovic. I don't. You talk about changes that Hrgovic can make as his career moves forward. He's 32, 33 years old.
32.
Joyce is 39. There's no changing with Joe Joyce. Like, this is kind of who he is. And I didn't walk away from that fight, Sergio, thinking that I want to see Joe Joyce back in action. I know he said that, he wanted to keep going. They still had something left in the tank and, did the whole gladiator thing. So are you not entertained? Yeah, but I don't want to see this guy just keep getting hit in the head by big, strong heavyweights. He's had a nice career. He was an Olympic silver medalist. He was on the cusp of a world championship. He was in some entertaining fights, no doubt about that. But I'm with his promoter, Frank Warren, who said after the fight that Joe needs to have a good long think on this. People around Joe should have a good long think about this, because If you can't beat a half-strength Filip Hrgovic, and you can't beat a 41-year-old Derek Chisora, I don't know who you're going to beat at this level.
You know, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I'm gonna stick out. I'm gonna stick up for Joe Joyce. A change of opponent, can be tricky for every fighter. So I give a lot of credit for Hrgovic. But whenever you're training for somebody and they throw someone else in you, no matter how great in shape, you're gonna look bad. So I don't know if Joe Joyce maybe was a victim of that. I don't know if it was I don't know what issues Joe Joyce had, but he looked old. He looked slow. He has no defense. He's an athletic guy. Joe Joyce is an athletic guy, and you mentioned the Olympic pedigree. He has that silver medal around his neck. You don't win silver medals if you're not athletic, strong, smart, and have any kind of fight IQ. But we don't see it on the professional level, Joyce. He has no head movement. He is literally the stiffest fighter, second coming of George Foreman. But at least George Foreman had power where, he didn't have to move that much. He just had to graze you.
George Foreman had one punch knockout power. I don't think Joe Joyce has that. Yeah.
That's my point. So he didn't have to move because he only had to graze you to hurt you. Joe Joyce has power, especially in that jab, but he's not George Foreman. George Foreman was an anomaly. He was special. One of the biggest punchers in boxing history. Top 3 for sure. So yeah, Joe Joyce is not cut from that cloth. So if he's going to come back, which I'm not advocating for. I hope Joe Joyce calls it a career. Let me just say that right now. I don't think it's going to end good for him, especially, getting knocked out back to back and losing 4 out of 5. But I do think if he does come back, focus on defense, focus on upper body movement, focus on the athleticism that he had when he was coming up, especially as an amateur. He was never a upper body movement, but he did have footwork. That's the thing about Joyce. He had footwork. I just think he needs a lot right now, but at almost 40 years old, I don't see it. I think it's an end of a career now.
Yeah, asking him to reinvent himself at this stage is asking a lot. I just can't see it. I don't see him getting nimbler. I don't see his head movement improving measurably. I just don't see it. And I think if he keeps going, he's going to wind up in with another young heavyweight, maybe like Moses Atauma. Like, does anybody really want to see Moses Atauma beat the crap out of Joe Joyce? Like, no, I don't want to see that. Not for Joe Joyce, who's a good guy.
Maybe less than a year ago, we had the same conversation about Derek Chisora. You were advocating for his retirement. You're saying that he was going to be shot and suffering from brain injuries, and now Derek Chisora is on a win streak, and he's going to get a.
Doesn't mean I was wrong either, but doesn't.
All I'm saying is, I'm not going to say that for Joe Joyce. You shouldn't say that for Joe Joyce. Everyone should be concerned for Joe Joyce. He doesn't have that Chisora veteran magic, and he's getting knocked out bad, and he's getting hit solid. I mean, he was taking some right hands by Hrgovic, and the only reason he stayed up is because he takes a better shot than most fighters, and 2, because he's a big, strong guy. He takes a punch. I don't want to see him take a punch anymore.
No, I don't either. Hrgovic puts himself back in the mix. That's for sure. Now back in the win column after that win over Joyce. And I think he's got a couple of good options, for another fight this year. I think a Dillian Whyte fight could be on the table for him. Dillian Whyte was scheduled to face Joe Joyce before he had to back out due to injury. He's back in play. He wants a big fight. Hrgovic could be there to travel to the UK once again for that type of matchup. I think he could get back in line for the IBF rankings. He was in line before that Dubois fight. I think after Chisora, I think you're looking like Frank Sanchez could be on the table in some kind of eliminator for Filip Hrgovic. So he's now got some good options. Like, he's not in title contention once again, but Sergio, you can see Hrgovic getting his momentum back pretty quickly if he gets one of those 2 fights and wins it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Dubois was done with, and now he's champion of the world. I saw quit in the eyes of Dubois. He got knocked out. I didn't really see much of a ceiling for him, especially after those losses. But look, he's back. So I think there could be some kind of rehabilitation. But yeah, it's going to be a lot. As far as for Hrgovic goes, as far as he goes, I think Derek Chisora fight. I know I keep mentioning Chisora, but that fight makes a lot of sense. Dillian Whyte, either one. Dillian Whyte, Derek Chisora. Pick your poison. Both those guys have given hell to world champions. They're still around for good reason. Any of those fights makes a lot of sense for Hrgovic. I think that's the way he should go.
Yeah, I don't know why Chisora would go there, because right now Hrgovic doesn't really bring anything to the table. Not when you're looking at your 50th and final fight. You want a big event,
Right.
and if you're Chisora, you know, if you don't get that world title shot against Daniel Dubois, maybe you're looking at another fight with Dillian White, which is a much bigger domestic fight. If you're Hrgovic, the money's in a Dillian White fight. You can do an eliminator. Again, you can fight someone like Frank Sanchez. Good fight for people like us. Not a mainstream marketable fight. Not a fight you can probably make a lot of money in. So I think Hrgovic should push for a Dillian White fight as well. But either way, he's back in the mix. Speaking of back in the mix, Sergio, Tszyu put himself back in the mix at 154 pounds, knocking out Joey Spencer in the 4th round of their fight over in Australia. The Zoos are 51-0 fighting in that part of Australia. That was a number I didn't know going into that fight, but quite the successful run for the Zoo family. And look, Tszyu I thought looked pretty good. Joey Spencer had a glossy record, but you and I both knew he was kind of an average fighter. Tszyu took him a couple rounds to get going, but in the 4th round, he started landing and just let his hands go and forced the stoppage of that fight. So your thoughts on Tszyu's performance on Saturday night?
He's back. He looked confident. You know, he threw every punch in the book, and Joey Spencer normally has he has no head movement. That's the reason I picked the knockout here, because of the lack of head movement. But he threw good punches. He was in there with a guy that you mentioned, comes from pedigree, comes from that Tszyu lineage, and Tszyu, just like his father, is great, boxer, puncher, solid laser right hand. They have good accuracy. That's the thing about the Zoos, man. They have great accuracy. They have this meanness, this quiet meanness where they don't need to talk. They're just gonna knock your block off, man. But it's their power and their accurate power that makes them, they're marksmen, man, especially with that right hand. So yes, he's back. Tszyu is back because there was no lack of confidence in his combinations. He was throwing every punch in the book. Anytime you're throwing jabs and right hands, left hooks, right uppercuts, and then repeating and rinsing and doing everything, and really peppering this guy, Joey Spencer. Yeah, man, it was a great coming out party. And he put some people, back in seats. Normally, whenever you have some setbacks, the fans turn on you, or the fans kind of don't show their support. They came out and watched them. They appreciate that last name. That's greatness. That's lineage. That's history in that Tszyu name. So I'm glad that Tszyu came back, because he has a lot to offer boxing, as long as they check the tough guy in Tszyu and they match make him right, man. He's back. Okay. Yes. Well, he's back. That's the question. Tszyu is back in the mix. Hold on.
The match make
back in the mix. But you better stay away from the Fandors and the Murtazalievs of the world.
Then what are you doing in boxing? Tszyu's not a 24-year-old prospect
former
coming
champion
back.
with a name. That's it.
He is 30. Okay, well, let's unpack all that. Now, let me start with Tszyu's performance, because I agree with you. Offensively, it was everything you could have asked for. The patience was there early, and the firepower was there late. That was the Tszyu that I got used to seeing fighting over in Australia over the last few years. That was the Tszyu that I saw beat Tony Harrison a couple of years ago. Like that version of him was back. But Sean Porter said something during the broadcast that I completely agree with, that even though Tszyu's offense was there, the head movement still wasn't. His head was still right there, right on a straight line, waiting to be hit. And that didn't get him into trouble against a fighter like Joey Spencer. It will get him into trouble when he takes on some of the big dogs at 154. It's what got him into trouble against Sebastian Fundora to a degree, and it definitely got him into trouble against Bakram Mutsalayev. So even though I'm glad that Tszyu got a win and got his momentum back, I still think there's work to do there, Sergio, because he can't go into these big fights being such a stationary target.
I agree with Sean Porter. I know exactly what he's seen, but I mentioned Coach Tszyyu, his father. That's exactly how the father fought, and he's in the Hall of Fame. He beat everybody you could think of. He was a legit puncher because they have that right hand and they're stationary. Yes, I mentioned that they're kind of like centaurs in a last podcast. If you think about it, they only do a slight upper body movement. They don't move their feet that much, and their footwork's all that not that good because they're always thinking about power. It's what makes them good. What makes them really good, is the fact that he's stationary. He has great marksmanship with that right hand, and he does it from uppercuts to straight right hands to right hooks. And he only needs to land one or two of those to really hurt you and rock you. That's how the Zeus fight, man. They're not upper body movers. They're not footwork. They're not cuties that move around the ring. They're stiff guys that stand in front of you. Yes, they risk that right hand down the middle, but you're also going to risk getting hit with that big right hand down the middle. And if I'm going to bet whose right hand's going to land, I'm going to bet the Zeus over anyone else that they fight.
Well, no,
That's
no,
the
you're
risk they
not.
take.
Of course, you're not betting the Zeus because we saw that against Bakram Mutsalayev, and Mutsalayev clocked him. Like Mutsalayev beat him silly, 3-round knockout. So no, we're not betting on the Zeus to beat anyone because their firepower is better than their opponents. We know that's not true. It wasn't true all the time with Tszyu, and it sure as hell isn't true with Tszyu. If Tszyu goes back in with Bakram Mutsalayev based on what you saw last Saturday, are you predicting anything different?
Yes, a better game plan, less courage, more jabs, more on the back, not more on the back foot, but at least take a step back. And even when the thing about Tszyu, even when he was bloody, when he was cut in that fight with Fundora, he still kept coming forward. That's normally when you start trying to protect the lead or try to get the guy to come forward or jab or use, do something else. These guys are courageous. They continue the same game plan, the same aggression, no matter what they're going through, and they take a big shot too. So it takes guys with power, with courage, undefeated records like Mutsalayev and pedigree to beat these guys, man. But
Mutsalayev has an undefeated record. He's good, but like I wouldn't say Mutsalayev is right now the class of 154. You've still got Fundora there. Charles Conwell is there. Virgil Ortiz is there. Like there's a whole bunch of guys at 154 that if Tszyu fights with this all offense, no defense type of style, or fights with the style where his head is straight on the line, he's going to get beat again. Like that still has to change with Tszyu. And look, I'm glad that the next opponent probably isn't going to be one of those guys. I said this on the last show. I think he is being lined up perfectly to get his momentum back. Joey Spencer, a perfect 154, not all that threatening. Tszyu gets the job done. Keith Thurman, I know people are high on Keith Thurman after he knocked out Brock Jarvis, but he's still 36 years old, and he's a 147-pounder. So that's a fight that I would favor Tszyu in going into there. So he's got time to kind of retool his game plan, but he's got to do it. Like he's got to change and become a more complete fighter if he wants to be on the level of some of the top guys at junior middleweight.
You're not going to see head movement from the Zeus. That's not their style.
He's going to get knocked out again.
Well, I mean, maybe he goes on a 10-fight win streak like his father. Tszyyu, when he got stopped, he went 10. He got stopped by
I remember
Bruno Phillips. Then he went on like a 10-12 win streak, knocking out guys. Then he got stopped again by Ricky Hatton, and he called it a career. Guys like the Zeus, they have way too much pride. They're not accustomed to losing. They've been successful all their lives. They're very smart. If you hear these guys talk, they're very smart. They're thinkers. They're killers in the ring. They're soft-spoken, but they're very smart. They're not accustomed to losing. So you can bet that if Tszyu has one more loss, just like his father, he's probably going to be out of the game. Young or whatever it is, because they're not accustomed to that. They can't fight at the absolute. They can't fight at the top. They can't beat the absolute best. They'd rather not be in the game. So I think Team Tszyu is going to be just fine with that style. That's the style that made him who he is. That's the style that made his father great. They're stiff fighters. There's a lot of stiff fighters with great right hands that were successful and that are in the Hall of Fame. That's just how this is going to plan out.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good comparison. I think it was Vince Phillips that knocked him out, Tszyu, years ago, and then Ricky had got in the 11th round of their fight. Yeah, I mean, look, speaking of Tszyu, like it was interesting, Tszyu saying that he doesn't want his father around ringside anymore. He was there in Orlando when he got beat by Mutsalayev, and Tim said that kind of messed him up a little bit. So, maybe kind of getting back to
Mannix, you've known me, 7 years now, working with me. I don't like the father-son relationship or the father-son trainer-father relationship. Even if Kostya's not in his corner, even if he's there, still a mental impact, man. You got to let your son grow up and be a man. You got to let him be a fighter. You got to let him venture off and be a champion on his own. If you're always hovering over him, they're always going to be junior. They're always going to be the little guy. They're always going to be on the father's shadow. Let that kid grow up. I'm glad that Tszyu said that. Most of these other juniors should do the same.
Do you like the Thurman fight next? Thurman says he's down for it. Tszyu said, sign the contract, as these guys like to say. Is that the right fight for Tszyu?
That's the only fight for him right now because what? Look, Keith Thurman has only lost once, I think, once against Manny Pacquiao. Great, no shame there. He's inactive. He has the name. He's never been knocked out. He comes to fight. He has big power. He's not a mover, so it's going to be two guys with stiff feet. I mean, well, Thurman is a little bit more agile, but it's two guys that go for the knockout. I love that fight. I love that fight for Tim Tszyu. That's exactly the fight that brings you back. If you can knock out a guy like Thurman, who has knocked out before. Pacquiao couldn't knock him out. Sean Porter couldn't knock him out. None of the big dogs at 47 could knock him out. If Tszyu could do that, now everything that he lost with the setbacks of Mutalayev and with Fundora, he gets it right back because that's boxing for you. You have short-term memory with one big knockout.
Yeah, I like the fight as well. I think it's the right fight for Tszyu. Thurman, fighting in Australia, got a big win, but Brock Jarvis is not Tszyu. Brock Jarvis was the same guy that was knocked out at 140 pounds by Liam Paro. So he was basically a blown-up 140-pounder. Tszyu, full-fledged 154. I think Keith Thurman would have a lot more problems with Tszyu, but it's the right fight. It's a big name, and I agree with you. If you can get a stoppage over Keith Thurman, he's back on track, and he's back in the mix for a big fight. All right, let's talk about Richard Torrez, the top-ranked prospect, former U.S. Olympian. He gets the biggest win of his career, beating Guido Vianello by unanimous decision at the Palms this past weekend. Doesn't get the knockout, which ends a long knockout streak for Richard Torrez Jr., but he goes the 10-round distance for the first time. I thought he looked pretty good, Sergio. I've been a little bit skeptical of Torrez because he's not the biggest heavyweight. He's only about 6'2", 76-inch reach. Fighting someone like Vianello, he looked pretty good. What did you think?
Not a fan yet. He has a lot of maturing to grow as a professional fighter. I think he's a slugger, and that style doesn't last long. All right, so he squares up a lot. He falls off balance a lot. It really amazes me that he was an Olympian. I just don't see the pedigree. I don't see how he was able to actually beat the best fighters in the U.S. to get on the Olympic team. Because normally, and I was part of this. I mean, I came up one fight short in the Olympic trials. You have to be one of the best in the country. You have to have a couple hundred fights as an amateur. You fight behind a jab. You're real polished, big right hand, especially in the amateurs where it's a point system. It's not aggression. It's not mauling your opponent. It's 1-2s and whoever lands cleaner. Torrez doesn't have that. He's a slugger. He goes looking for the big overhand rights and lefts. I don't see it, man. I don't see it. He has the look. I mean, I give him that. He has that look that you really don't see in heavyweight boxers, but he's not big enough. You said he's 6'2", 200 and what, 25, 30 pounds? With fighting behemoths now that are 6'5" plus, 250 pounds plus, he's gonna be tiny. The only thing I give Richard Torrez Jr. credit for is the fact that he's still undefeated. He was been able to be in the Olympic team, but he's a natural cruiserweight. I think if he's going to have any success, he should be a cruiserweight. I don't think he's going to pan out as a heavyweight.
I don't know, man. He wasn't just a former U.S. Olympian. I mean, he was a silver medalist in the super heavyweight division at the Tokyo Olympics. And before that, he has a long history of success at the amateur ranks, like 2017 Golden Glove champion, 2017 and 18 U.S. national champion, a lot of U.S. youth national championships. So it's not like he's just some guy that made the Olympic team and now here he is fighting professionally. He is a decorated amateur. Like, he's got the pedigree. You love talking about guys' pedigrees. You ask guys in our fighter meetings what their amateur background is all the time. Well, Richard Torrez's amateur background would impress the hell out of you. He's been that good. I do agree that size does matter, but watching him slug it out with Guido Vianello, watching him control the ring the way that he did, I don't know.
Control the ring. He was falling off balance, looking for overhand looping shots. He's a southpaw, so he's always looking. He does have a right hook. I'll give you that. Anytime a southpaw has a good right hook, then he can make a career. I think that's how he's able to make the Olympics. That's how he's able to maintain this undefeated streak. He has a good right hook and he has good timing. But when he misses, he falls off balance, squares up. He's a sucker for the jab. I don't think he has a high ceiling as a heavyweight, man. I hate to break it to him and everyone else. I don't see it. As a cruiserweight, absolutely. I see a lot of potential.
Well, he still has room to grow, right? He's just 13 fights into his pro career. Top Rank's not going to rush him into a world title fight. They're not going to rush him at all, given what they had happen with Jared Anderson in his fight against Martin Bakole. I think there's still 2 or 3 levels for him to get to before we start talking about him on the world level. But that was a test. Like the Guido Vianello fight was a test. It wasn't the prettiest fight in the world. I'll give you that. It wasn't the most fun fight to watch, but he did apply pressure. He did land hooks. He did what he had to do. He went the 10-round distance against a decent fighter.
What grade do you give him, Mannix? What grade do you give that?
I give him a B. I give him a B.
Really, a B?
Yeah, I give him a B.
What did you like out of his performance?
I like the pressure that he applied. I like some of the hooks that he was landing. Look, that was a step-up fight, Sergio. It wasn't like, look at some of the guys he's fought beforehand. Like, that was a step-up fight. To go the 10-round distance, that is a step-up. You got to pass these tests along the way. Not every one of them is going to be pretty.
All right, look, man, maybe I'm being a little bit tough on Torrez here. I want to see a little bit. Look, but I didn't give him a B. I give him a C at that, C plus. But I want to see a little bit more with bigger heavyweights. I want to see how he does with a 6'5" heavyweight, because that's who he's going to be facing if he actually decides to stay at heavyweight. So I want him to really be with someone that
Guido Vianello's 6'6", so like that's a big guy he fought.
Really, he was that big?
Yeah, 6'6", and Vianello. Like I understand that like Makhmudov is not very good. We figured that out when he lost to Aji Kabayal a couple of years ago. But Vianello had stopped him. He lost a split decision to F.A. Ajagba. So like he had some decent names on his resume. And Torrez, like that was a step up fight for Richard Torrez. And I think you give him a B for passing that test, winning unanimous decision there. And now it's on to the next for him. So I was not bothered that much by what Torrez.
All right. Well, look. I want to be on board with you. I just want to see more jabs. I want to see more foot speed. I want to see more footwork and move the upper body. Because look, I told you he has a great right hook, and he can go a long way as a southpaw with that right hook. But if he can polish up the head movement and then jab his way in, jab to the belly, learn how to fight like a 6'2" heavyweight, I think he does well. Like who was that one that fought Anthony Joshua Franklin? What was his name?
Jermaine Franklin.
Jermaine Franklin. Look, I'm not saying be like Jermaine Franklin, but Franklin was about that size, and he fought big men really well, aggravated these big men, especially going across the pond, because he knew how to fight small, and he's around that same size. He knows how to bend his back. He knows how to jab to the belly and then come over the top, loop the shots. I think if Torrez can do a little bit of that and learn how to fight small, learn from smaller, shorter heavyweights, Chris Bird, Mike Tyson, guys like that, I think maybe he has a future. But if he continues just slugging it out, he's bound to run into the right hand.
Well, he's still young, and I think there's still room for him to grow. And again, we're not talking about him being put in with an Anthony Joshua or even someone close to that. I think he's going to fight somebody else along the lines of Guido Vianello, and then we'll see what we got in Richard Torrez. But he gets a win, goes 10 rounds. I think that's worth something.
One last thing, Mannix. One last thing. What do you think about that stash from Torrez?
I'm not a fan of the stash. I'm not a fan of any stash. I'm not a fan of the Torrez stash. I'm not a fan of the Corey Erdman stash. I'm not a fan of anybody's mustache.
I agree,
unless
man.
Your name,
he looks
unless
like
your name is unless your name is Tom Selleck.
I'll tell you right now, he looks like Tom Selleck or a 1970s adult film star, man. But there's I'm not a fan of the stash.
Like Tom Selleck, Burt Reynolds. There's only a handful of guys that can pull off a mustache. It's just, and you and I are not one of them. If we tried to wear those, like when people don't shave their stash in November for Movember, you see some tough looks, man. Some tough looks with the mustache in Movember. A lot of my friends do it, and it's not pretty. It's not an easy look to pull off. All right, let's talk about Janibek, who defended his unified middleweight championship over in Kazakhstan. Picks up a 5th-round knockout. I don't even know how to pronounce his opponent's name, so I'm not even going to try. This guy was completely overmatched, even though he had an undefeated record going in. It was yet another nondescript world title defense for Janibek, who was racking up these pointless fights faster than any world champion in recent memory. I don't want to really talk about the fight, Sergio. It was a 5th-round knockout. It was a spectacular knockout. Great, big deal. He wasn't fighting anybody of any real consequence. The question now is, like, when are we going to see Janibek in with anybody, right? Like, I do believe that he wants some of these big fights, but he is the unified champion at 160 pounds. Carlos Adames has a belt at 160 pounds. Arislani Lara has a belt at 160 pounds. Like, what are these guys doing? Like, Arislani Lara has been off forever. Carlos Adames just fought a competitive fight against Hamza Shiraz. He should be looking to get back in the ring in the next couple of months. Janibek is 32 years old. Like, it's not like we're talking about a 25-year-old still growing in his career. He's 32 years old. It's time for him to get into the ring with somebody, with anybody at 160 pounds, or else move up and try your luck at 168 where there are some bigger names. What are your thoughts on Janibek and kind of where he goes from here?
He's gonna have difficulty because he's in a middleweight division that, for decades used to be red hot, and now it's cold as ever, man. You got Arislani Lara, a guy that nobody's want to face and is 41, 42 years old, and now he picked
Oh, come on. Not everybody wants to face him now. That's not true. Everybody wants to face Arislani Lara. Arislani Lara is not the guy that fought Canelo.
For a long time, no one will mention Arislani Lara. He was
everybody. Danny Garcia called him out immediately. Everybody's talking about Arislani Lara. Don't say that. Ammo Williams wants Arislani Lara.
Now that he's 40, but were they calling him out 5-10 years ago? Hell no.
No, but this isn't 5-10 years ago. It's 2025. He's 40-something years old, and he's holding that WBA belt hostage at the moment. Like, it's time to bleep or get off the pot for some of these guys. Like, what is the point of being a world champion if you are not going to defend or unify your titles against other world champions, especially, Sergio, when you're in a weight class which, like you said, is dormant? The middleweight division used to be one of the sexiest divisions in all of boxing. Now, it's just lame at this point. Like, Janibek's out there with 2 belts. At Adames, most people didn't even realize had that WBC title. Lara last fought Danny Garcia like a year ago. What are we doing? Like, what are these guys doing? There should be active negotiations between PBC, which represents Lara and Adames. Hell, just make a Lara-Adames fight. I'm fine with that. And Top Rank, which is apparently doing some business with PBC, to make a Janibek unification fight. Like, these guys need to spend the rest of this year getting in the ring with each other and making these fights happen.
Don't ever say sexiest or something like that, comparing boxers to, don't use
I'm talking about the division. The division.
I understand that, man, but just coming out of your mouth just doesn't sound right. It's like a bad joke, the middleweight division right now. It's like a Cuban, a Dominican, and a Kazakhstani fighter walking to a bar. It goes nowhere because none of these guys have a following. They're not huge punchers. They're more boxers. The only puncher here is Janibek, and he breaks down fighters, and he hasn't really done it on the championship level. Look, you asking me what they should do with Janibek? They should do what they did with Golovkin. And I know it's going to be a stretch here, but what did they do when they brought Golovkin over here? They put him up against familiar names. It wasn't the knockouts. It was the familiar names. It was the people he was knocking out. First fight that he had was against one of my old rivals, Gregos Prokska. He knocked out Prokska. Was the first one to knock out Prokska. Knocked out Gabriel Rosado. Knocked out Matthew Macklin. Knocked out Curtis Stevens. These aren't world champions, but they're well-recognized names. I think that's what Janibek needs to do. That's what Top Rank needs to do. Start looking for these familiar names, not the guys that you can't even pronounce his name. You can't even remember his name. When we think the casual fan's going to do it. But if they can get a familiar name, maybe like a Lara or someone else, then that's how you build Janibek's record. If you can do that and knock him out, then maybe you have something special we can package and sell later. But for right now, you got a 6'1" southpaw that can punch, can't speak English, and no one wants to face in a dormant division, like you said. Yeah, it's going to be a hard sell, hard to market him.
I tell you, I would love to see our friend Demetrius Andrade drop back down to 160 and fight Janibek. I think that would be a really fun fight and a good fight for both those guys. Demetrius Andrade only has that one loss on his resume, and that was to David Benavidez. I know I don't know if they're still trained together, but his trainer at the time.
Has Boo Boo, when's the last time Andrade fought?
He hasn't fought since the Benavidez loss. That was over a year ago. He's been out of the ring for a long time. And look, he's been out there on social media, on YouTube, talking about how he wants to get back into it. I think he still has something left to give, but I think a Janibek fight is the kind of fight that makes sense for both those guys.
I love that fight, Chris Mannix, is what I just mentioned earlier.
The question, Sergio, is like, can Boo Boo get down to 160 again? Like, he was a big. He might say otherwise.
These are two 6'1", really good southpaws with experience, and I think that's an excellent fight. I would love to see that fight. I totally forgot about Andrade, but I know that's your boy right there. I would love to see him come back and do something special against Janibek, and maybe he can even become a champion, a unified champion again.
Hey, he had never been the unified champion. He had one version of that title, vacated it, and moved up in weight. When he thought he was going to fight Zach Parker, winds up getting a fight against Benavidez. Yeah, I'd like to see it. I think both those guys need that type of fight to keep their career moving. Otherwise, make a unification fight, man. Like, what is Lara doing? What is Adames going to do next? What is Janibek going to do next? He had to fight over in Kazakhstan for I don't know how much money he was making for that fight. He's got to be in a meaningful fight in 2025. All right, let me ask you about Josh Warrington, the former world champion over in the UK, who says he is still not done with boxing. Warrington has lost 3 fights in a row. The most recent loss, a decision to defeat Anthony Kakachi. After that fight, Warrington kind of lay his boots down in the ring, sort of a sign that he would be done with boxing. Turns out he is not. He is intending to return to the ring against Asad Khan, which is going to take place on April 19th. Your thoughts on Josh Warrington keeping his career going?
Look, man, anytime a fighter starts losing towards the end of his career and losing bad, getting knocked out, he won one fight in his last 6. That's the end of a career, man. That's the end of the career. I think the Leeds Warrior needs to really consider a lot of things in his career because I think Mauricio Lara ruined him. It ruined him. That's why I always tell you one bad beating can ruin your career. That's exactly what we saw with Josh Warrington, who was supposed to be the next UK star, man. This guy had boxing ability. He didn't have power, but he had boxing ability. He always was a gutsy fighter. He would always get in the mix. He wasn't a strict boxer. He liked going forward. He just didn't have that pop. But now that's all gone. His career is ruined. I hate to say that because there's no salvaging Josh Warrington's career. No matter how popular he is, there's no salvaging that chin. There's no recuperating his recuperation powers. He's never had power, so where's he gonna muster up any kind of energy to go on a 3-4 fight streak run to get back to a world championship? He ruined that when he faced Mauricio Lara. They should have never faced that unknown Mexican. They should have never did that. They should have.
Well, they didn't know what he was.
They should have held down to that IBF belt and make a killing on that side of the pond and stay away from these unknown Mexicans, man. That's just what happens when you get these unknown Mexicans go all the way to UK and they end up knocking off these guys, man. It's just a different breed of fighter over there. Leave them guys alone. Leave them Mexicans alone on that side of the world, man. You be a champion, build your name, pick off some of these guys at the European level, maybe some Americans. Stay away from these unknown guys if they don't have a belt. Mexican fighters, if they don't have a belt, they don't bring nothing to the table. Stay away from them. You got nothing to gain. Josh Warrington and Team Warrington and the promotion and everyone else, hate to be harsh, but they all had a part to they ruined, not ruin. It's boxing. One fight can change things. They didn't do a good job managing his career. They had a lot more to bring out of him, and they didn't do it because of Lara fight.
Well, the Lara fight was obviously devastating. I think the Lee Wood loss was probably what did him in completely and really showed that he doesn't have the punch resistance anymore. He did go the distance with a Kakachi. That was, a feather in his cap. Kakachi's a pretty decent puncher. Knocked out Joe Cordina in the fight before that. But I don't know what, he's coming back in a relatively low-level fight. Assuming he gets a win later this month, does he go on to fight one of the top guys at 130? Do we
no.
do we want to see him in with Sugar Nunez? It's something no, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see Josh Warrington with Sugar Nunez.
What did I just say about these tough
Mexicans? I'm with you. Sugar Nunez though, at some point probably going to get his hands on one of those belts. Do you want to see him in with Oshaki Foster? I don't not you nod at that one. You want to see him with Oshaki Foster like that?
Maybe better, but I don't want to see Warrington anymore. He's a shot fighter. And you know how much I hate saying certain words, I know. Nah, Warrington's shot. I don't want to see him in the ring again, man. I just think his career went in a different direction. It had a high ceiling, and it crumbled on him just in one night. And it happens, man. This is boxing. One fight changes your career, changes your life, changes your health, changes a lot of things. It's a dangerous sport, man. You got to manage it well. That's why whenever you tell me, oh, guys need to fight and they need to, not protect their zero, I'm like, bullshit, man. Guys like Warrington had a lot more money to make, a lot more championships to win, and a lot more career to stretch. And now at what he's not even in his mid 30s yet.
Yes, he is. He's 34.
34. He's not even 35 yet. I mean, he had more to give. He had more to give, way more paychecks to collect, and now it went out the window with these lower class fights that he can't even win anymore. So
in hindsight, the Lara fight was a huge mistake. Huge mistake. And believe me, I've had this conversation with Matchroom multiple times over the years. Like, they had no idea what Mauricio Lara was. Like, they were just bringing him in as this kind of opponent. It was during the pandemic, right? Like, he was just some guy they brought over to get Warrington a win. Turned out to go catastrophically wrong that night. But they didn't, maybe they should have known better, and known what Lara was capable of. But stuff like that happens sometimes in boxing. Get a tough matchup and things go downhill. But I think the Wood fight was really the final nail in his coffin. Before I let you go, Sergio, were you monitoring at all over the weekend the back and forth between Oscar De La Hoya and Shakur Stevenson? Oscar De La Hoya tweeting out that Shakur Stevenson has ducked William Zepeda. That sent off a tweet storm by Shakur Stevenson saying, hell no, I didn't duck William Zepeda. What Shakur says happened is that he was promised a certain amount of money from Turki Al-Sheikh, and Turkey or whoever represents him reneged on that, said they weren't going to pay him that dollar figure. So the deal that was in place for the Zepeda fight went away. But he says he's ready, willing, and able to fight William Zepeda. You know what? I believe him, because I think Shakur probably watched those two fights against Tevin Farmer and said, all right, if Tevin Farmer can give him hell, I can do worse. Now, this is an opportunity, Sergio, for a sanctioning body to do the right thing. Like, William Zepeda is the interim champion at 135. Shakur Stevenson is the full champion at 135. All Mauricio Sulaiman and the WBC has to do is order a purse bid. No need to have two champions. Shakur says he's ready to go. William Zepeda, he's going to be ready to go in the coming months. Order the purse bid. And then let the chips fall where they may. If one of these fighters does not like the result of the purse bid, they can back out. And then we'll know who is avoiding that particular fight. But I'm begging the WBC, who I've been critical of many times over these years, but I'm begging the WBC to order this purse bid. Let's make this fight happen. Let's get these two guys in the ring. A big U.S. fight before the end of this year. Do it in Southern California, where Zepeda's got fans. Do it in Newark, New Jersey, where Shakur Stevenson has fans. Don't let this fight go away. Don't let it fade away, and we wind up with Shakur against another overmatched opponent and Zepeda against another overmatched opponent. These two guys need to fight each other. It is an unbelievable contrasting style, Sergio. It is a great matchup between these two guys. I need the WBC to do its job. You've got two champions at 135 in that division. The interim champion and the full champion. Order a purse bid, WBC, please.
I'm surprised that Oscar De La Hoya wants that fight for Zepeda, especially when we saw how he had his hands full against the Tevin Farmer, who's not a puncher. Either Shakur, but Shakur is way younger, way slicker, way faster, way harder to hit than Farmer. And Farmer's hard to hit, but we haven't seen if Shakur's tough. Tevin Farmer proved how tough he is in his last fight. Even I didn't expect him to be as resilient as he was. Man, that guy showed heart, and I hope Tevin Farmer gets another fight because he deserves it after those back-to-back performances. But Shakur hasn't proved that he has that resilience, that chin. We haven't seen him in a dogfight. We haven't seen him in a physical fight. Zepeda would get him into a physical fight. Maybe that's why his promoter, Oscar De La Hoya, is so confident in making this fight, or else I really don't know what else. I mean, we all know that Oscar De La Hoya has become a brilliant social media promoter now, trolling these guys. And I love his little clapback that he does and all these things that he does. So credit to Oscar De La Hoya. I hope he keeps it going, because that's how this new generation gets his promotion and this news from. But if he's willing to put up Zepeda against a sniper like Shakur, everyone avoids, every champion avoids. Nobody mentions Shakur Stevenson's name for good reason. So that's the reason I really give not only Oscar credit, but Zepeda credit, because why would they want to fight Shakur? Why? So, yeah, I hope WBC does do the right thing. And if it does happen, at least it's for a lot of money, and it's a championship fight.
Well, there's nowhere else for either one of these guys to go. Tank Davis is going to fight a rematch against Lamont Roach. We have no idea if Lomachenko is ever going to come back. We know Keyshawn Davis and Shakur are never going to fight. Keyshawn Davis, I believe, is going to fight Edwin De Los Santos at some point in the next couple of months. So here we are with these two top guys at 135 with no fight. This has to happen. Otherwise, boxing looks stupid. The sanctioning body looks stupid. Make this fight happen between these two guys. It's simple. Call the purse bid. Make both sides, Golden Boy and Matchroom, show up, and to the highest bidder goes the fight. If someone doesn't want it, then they can walk away from it. Then that's going to be the guy that ducked. That's going to be the guy that walked away from that fight. All right, Sergio, why don't you go spend your non-existent winnings this week, and I will see you in Atlantic City on Thursday for your debut in AC.
Let me see if I can hit a trifecta in the horse races in Atlantic City, like I hit a trifecta in boxing, baby.
There are no horse races going on in April in Atlantic City.
I'll bet on 3 football games.